When Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree first dropped, many including myself considered it to be one of the best DLCs ever made. There was a lot of hype surrounding it, a lot of different streamers and just people new to Elden Ring in general was playing through it. While it was received well by most critics, praising its level design, bosses and new mechanics introduced, it still had its fair share of negative reviews. Just like with any other media though, the honeymoon phase fades away. Over time, some players began to speak up about what didn't sit right. The Erdtree fragment system, the boss design, the scaling, and to be honest, all that backlash made me want to revisit it. I wanted to know, was I just caught up in the moment, was it recency bias, or did Shadow of the Erdtree truly hold up as one of the best expansions ever made? You see, Shadow of the Erdtree holds a special place in my heart. It was the expansion that helped my channel in terms of growth, reaching new people who loves the series as much as I do. So this video is not really a review, but just me going back 1 year later to see if my opinions on it have changed. I'm going to play through the DLC and explain it as I go by. I'm mostly going to talk about stuff like the mechanics and different systems introduced and the overall quality. I'm not really going to go over the story that much, but I will briefly talk about the lore of certain characters and areas when I have the chance. Alright, let's get into it. I chose a character that was endgame but haven't already started the DLC, which means that I have to get through Mogwin first. After getting my ass handed to me around 2 to 4 times, I finally beat him with the Blasphemous Blade. After that I tried going in the DLC but nothing happened. Then I remembered that I probably haven't beaten Radonus yet, which is weird because I always fight him on every new character and I guess I got lazy with this one. Anyways, I went over there, whooped his ass before the second phase could even happen, and then I was finally able to enter the DLC. One thing that always bummed me out is that there isn't any cool cutscene that plays or anything. It's literally just a loading screen and then boom, you're here. It's a slight nitpick, but whatever. Finally, we're here, and as soon as we step out of the cave, we see this beautiful open vista. The Graveside Plains. FromSoft nails a lot of things perfectly, but their art style and art direction is on a whole different level. Sure, it's the typical medieval dark fantasy knights in shining armor type shit, but seeing stuff like the Shadow Tree being drained and the golden cloudy skies and other stuff really makes their game stand out from the rest. It's just beautiful and also kinda scary. Literally, as soon as you walk out, if you're not careful, you can get ambushed by this enemy right here. Well, more like a sneak attack, but you know what I mean. He's pretty challenging since you don't have any Erdtree fragments, so I usually just run past him. Speaking of fragments, let's talk about that for a little bit. At first, I really like the idea of the fragment system as one, it makes sure that the player isn't too overleveled for the DLC, and two, it gives us an excuse to explore the map. However, despite this, it's not a system that I ever want to see again, mostly due to how tedious it can be. One of the main criticism I had for this was how hidden some of these were, and that wouldn't even be a problem if they treated it like the golden seeds from the base game, where you can find all the required golden seeds and have a max level flask, but still have more seeds that could be found. It's great in the sense that you don't always feel the need to look through every nook and cranny just to find one, so missing one in a weird spot isn't gonna hold you back by any means, as there's always another you can find in a different location. The Erdtree fragments aren't like that. You need 50 to be at level 20, which is the max level, and that's the exact amount they have laying around the map. Mind you, this map is big, almost as big as the main game, and the fact that these are crucial so that you don't get one shot by the bosses, it's kind of weird. Honestly, that's just my main complaint with them. I just wish that there were more and that they weren't as hidden. Okay, I'm going off track. Let's go back. After searching around the map for some Erdtree fragments, we made our way back to Bale Tower, and man, I was intimidated by this area on my first playthrough. It's just gigantic and gray, and what's inside is a bit more terrifying. The enemies here hits like trucks. You got scorpions and these shadow dudes, but the hardest hidden ones are the Divine Beast warriors. Now, the tower settlement itself was caught in the crossfire of Mesmer's crusade, which is probably why it's abandoned and overrun by monsters. Once we make our way all the way to the top of the settlement, we encounter the Divine Beast. The Divine Beasts are said to be messengers of heaven. Funny thing about this beast is that it's technically two guys controlling it. Kind of. I wouldn't say control, more like they're being controlled. You see, the creepy thing about this is that these two guys are performing what's called a ritual lion dance, which is more of a festive thing for the Hornsent folks. However, they can still whoop some ass, as that's what they were used for during the crusade. During this ritual, the two guys are the ones being possessed by the spirit of the Divine Beast, so technically they're the avatars for it. Also, most of the divine beasts were wiped out during the crusade, except for two, this one hidden here in the tower and another one in the ancient ruins. These are said to be some of the most powerful warriors, but the fact that Mesmer and his army was able to take so many of them out is actually kind of insane. Okay, that aside, I do somewhat like this fight. Sure, the camera is a bit shitty and it's super hard to read its attacks, but the fight itself can be fun once you get used to it. It's also one of the more cinematic bosses in the game. All that aside, after 2 tries I was able to beat it. Then I went to the other side of the tower, climbed the stairs, but were blocked by some impenetrable thorns. So we have to find the source of this so that we can progress. After this, we made our way back to the beginning area before the tower, but this time decided to head to the other major tower. This one more resembles something like the Carrion Manor, as there are a decent amount of magic nobles here. And when we reach the top, we finally see why. Here we have Rilana, the twin Moon Knight. She's a former princess of the Carrion family and the younger sister of Renala. The reason why she's here now and not in the lands between is because she left her family behind to stand with Mesmer. After this, she was eventually known as Mesmer's sword. So boss fight wise, I do wish Rilana had some type of cutscene. I mean, she's literally the sister of Renala, yet she was treated like some random mini-boss. A fucking bridge got a whole cutscene. You're telling me that they couldn't even do 10 seconds of her staring at you menacingly or some shit? Luckily, her design presence and her cinematic moveset makes her memorable. I was kind of dreading having to go back to fight her after so long, mostly because I remember how much of a hard time she gave me back when the DLC first dropped. One of the main issues I had with her is her moveset. Her combos seem to be everlasting at times, and while now the muscle memory kicked in and I can pretty much read her attacks, I still have some trouble dodging her, because she can reach behind her ass and attack you. It's almost like both her arms have lives on their own, but after a while I didn't mind this too much. However, my actual biggest criticism, and it's gonna go for most of the bosses, is the fact that they usually have super long ass combos with very few openings. And here it's the same. However, on the 4th try, I was finally able to defeat her. And after defeating Rilana, we then get access to the Shadow Altus. And here is where I think the DLC really opens up. You have the option to go straight ahead to the Shadow Keep, which is the big ass tower right here, or go to the Cerulean coast. Within the Shadow Keep, you can also take the path to the ancient ruins or make it down to the Abyssal Woods. I was a little confused on which boss I had to tackle next, so I just went straight for the Golden Hippo to collect some shadow fragments. And to be honest, this fight wasn't that bad this time around, which is a good thing because I usually hate this thing with a passion. And after defeating it, I went straight to the Cerulean coast and inside the Fissure to fight the Putrescent Knight. While in the Fissure, you'll realize that the area has a purple fog in it. In Elden Ring, purple usually symbolizes gravity, but it's also the color that represents sleep, as in this case, this is where Saint Trina is. Saint Trina is the other half of Miquella, and she's in an eternal slumber at the very bottom. The stone coffin Fissure was also transformed by Saint Trina's very presence, almost terraforming it with deep purple lilies forming around it. The fluids from the coffin being mixed with their nectar allowed the dead to rest peacefully, and from this the Putrescent Knight was created. And speaking of Putrescent Knight, I remember he was one of my least favorite fights in the DLC, and after fighting him again, he's definitely not as bad as I remembered, but still my opinions on him haven't really changed if you ask me. He's a cool looking boss, he isn't really tanky at the right level, and his moveset looks really cool. The only two thing that makes him really difficult is the fact that he hits harder than a truck and his small hitbox. The hitbox part pisses me off because sometimes I will literally stand right in front of him and as I attack, he shifts his body like 1 inch and for some reason I still missed that attack. But apart from that, I was kind of struggling on him, but I got it done on the 3rd try. Still one of my least favorite bosses in the DLC though, but this time he was way more manageable. Before I move on, I wanted to talk about a major criticism that gets brought up when talking about Shadow of the Erdtree, and that's how empty it felt. Now, me personally, I didn't really mind this too much. I've already gotten all the stuff I wanted from the base game, and it's really hard thinking of other crazy interesting things other than more weapons and armor that the DLC could fit into the world. Maybe they could have added some more interesting mini-bosses, even though we got those already. Still though, I'm not going to trash on anyone that has this opinion because I do admit it does feel rather empty at times, but what saves it is the atmosphere, beauty, and also the mystery surrounding each area. Again, I just brought this up mostly because this was a criticism that keeps popping up. Okay, back on topic. After defeating the knight, we make our way back to the Shadow Keep. However, we're not going to fully explore it yet. We're going to take a detour that's only accessible through here to the next location. We take a ladder down to the catacombs under the Shadow Keep, beat the mini boss at the end, and finally we're here, in the Abyssal Woods, one of my favorite levels in Souls history. Sure, it's a bit empty, but you can't deny on how atmospheric it feels. Going from the typical bright overworld to this dark, twisted, and honestly nightmare-fuel woods that has been corrupted by the frenzied flame was definitely a shift. And dare I say, I think the emptiness feeling is what adds on to the horror, and the fact that you can't summon Torrent. But what makes this place truly terrifying is the aging untouchables. It seems like the Winter Lanterns from Bloodborne found their way here in Elden Ring, and they're even more terrifying than before. For the first time from all the times I've been playing Souls games, this was the only time I felt powerless against an enemy, at least on my first playthrough. The fact that you have these guys that can not only spot you from a distance, but move at breakneck speed in order to reach and grab you, and mind you, they do a lot of damage too. And I'm pretty sure if they grab you twice, that's it. Plus they're unkillable unless you know how to parry them. Playing through this level, while not as scary as my first time, was still a bit creepy. Anyways, after progressing further into the woods, we encountered this creepy manse, with decapitated corpses on the outside. Stepping into the manse, a ghost tells us to get the hell out, but we ignore him and make it all the way to the top floor, and we hear some screams coming from a room. When we go in, we see an old feeble man, and he's in a lot of pain. And we do the only logical thing and beat the shit out of him. Doing this, we get the reveal of Midra, the Lord of Frenzied Flame. A long time ago, Midra was chosen to be the Lord of Frenzied Flame, however, he turned out to be weak. Like really weak, to the point where this ascension, if you can even call it that, failed. The Hornsen found out about the Frenzied Flame and Midra and his people's action and decided to pay the man's a little visit, executing everyone as they disapproved of the flame's use. They destroyed the man's, killed everyone all for one, and that's Midra. Even though they impaled him with the Great Sword of Damnation, it still wasn't enough to kill him. He purposely endured this agonish pain to one, satisfy Nanaya, who was his possible lover, I guess. She believed he could be the Lord of Frenzied Flame if he just, endured enough pain. And that's what he's doing. As much as he wants to just end his suffering, he still wants to accomplish his goal, if you can even call it that at this point. After we beat the brakes out of him, that's when he fully turned and became the Lord of Frenzied Flame. Now, fight-wise, Midra is fantastic and still to this day one of my favorite bosses in Souls history. I'm not really surprised that my opinion on him 1 year later hasn't changed, as the fight itself is just amazing. The visuals, the moveset, everything about Midra is goated. Oh, also his OST goes hard too. The only slight complaint I have, and it's not really a complaint, but his madness attacks hits like missiles. I literally got my whole health bar wiped out just because my dumbass stood still for less than a second. Luckily, his moveset is very easy to study. Again, a super fun fight. I then went back to the Shadow Keep and go all the way down to fight Gaius. To be honest, I was dreading having to fight this guy because he gave me such a hard time on release. But this time I chose sanity over ego and decided to use the Mimic tier, and it helped a lot. We both got shit done in no time. Still though, Commander Gaius is an absolutely garbage fight, mostly because of his shitty hitbox. After that, I went back up and made it all the way to the top of the Shadow Keep to face Mesmer the Impaler. Mesmer is the son of Queen Marika, and he's super loyal to her. He was cursed with the base serpent inside of him, which is basically this abyssal snake deity. Marika oftentimes tried curing him or at least ease his pain, but nothing she did barely helped. However, she did eventually create a seal in a form of an eye to keep the serpent at bay, and it seemed like it did work for the most part. When she wanted to ascend to godhood, Mesmer made sure to help by leading a deadly crusade, destroying the Hornsen's land and the people. After this, Marika abandoned him, making her rank high in the deadbeat parent council, just under low tier god. You know what, I take that back. Marika at least tried taking care of her kid. Because of this, Mesmer was depressed and shut himself in his chamber, all until we, the Tarnished, pulled up. The fight with Mesmer was beautifully done. I remember last year I said that Mesmer was my favorite boss in Elden Ring, and after playing the DLC again, I'm glad to say that he still is. His moveset is just fun to dodge and counter, his design and presentation is great, and the only thing I didn't really like too much was the arena and how dull it looked. But going back and playing it now, his arena is actually not bad. Not everything needs to be on this crazy Renala or Elden Beast level of spectacle, and that's something I recently learned. And yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about Mesmer. I've already glazed this guy so much on my channel, I don't think it's possible to go any further. After doing that, I decided to take the elevator down from the Shadow Keep and head to the ancient ruins. Progressing further into the ruins, we start to realize that there's a lot of Scarlet Rot and Kindreds of Rot around the area. Usually these things show up because there's something keeping them around, and we find the answer when we go inside this destroyed church. We encounter this half-arachnid lady, Romina, Saint of the Bud. Romina was once a vital member of the church. This church seemed to worship the Bud, which has ties to Scarlet Rot. During Mesmer's crusade, the church was burned down. At this time, a twisted divine element was discovered by her. Embracing this, she became the vessel of the outer god of Rot itself. This granted her new abilities. The pest saw her as a mother figure and reached out to her, and this is how she got the name Saint of the Bud. To this day, I'm still shocked at how little recognition Romina gets as a boss, and I fully blame the whole no cutscene thing, which I will get deeper into later in this video. Her design is great, the OST is amazing, she has an amazing moveset, and her boss fight itself is fun, but for some reason no one talks about her. Anyways, we end up killing her. So we're pretty much at the end game now, and our next destination would usually be just going straight ahead to Ner Illim, but before doing that we need to go to the Jagged Peak to pay a certain dragon a little visit. Jagged Peak is definitely up there as one of my favorite levels, not because there's a lot of things to do in it, but mostly because of how beautiful it is in a messed up way. The lightning storm, the dragons fighting, the dirt brown hue mixed in with red, it looks really cool and it just shows how great FromSoft's art direction is. Anyways, we progress through the mountain and make it all the way to the very top, and here we encounter Bale The Dread. Now, Bale's lore is interesting. There isn't a lot of info on him other than the fact that he betrayed Placidusax and attacked him, causing him to lose 2 of his head, but Bale was damaged as well. He lost his leg and his wings were damaged. It's not a lot of info, but again, super interesting. Now, fight-wise, I used to think of Bale as overrated, mostly because, similarly to Radahn, he has a lot of insane combos with little downtime. Because of this, I dreaded fighting him. But this time around, I actually didn't struggle too much and managed to get him on my 3rd try. I realized that there are definitely some openings, it's just hard to read because there's a lot of constant AoE attacks causing visual clutter, especially in the 2nd phase. But I managed to pull through, and hey, I can actually say that Bale is definitely more enjoyable than I remembered. After defeating Bale, I then went ahead and defeated the Erdtree Avatar and Meteor. Both great fights visually, but not really all that fun in terms of mechanics. And finally, after doing all of that, I made it back to the church, where we killed Romina. Remember the vines that was blocking our path after defeating the divine beast earlier? Well, now that we have Mesmer's flame, we're able to burn it down, finally granting us access to Ner Illim. After getting my ass handed to me countless times by the enemies here, I encountered Leda and her little gang, beat the shit out of them, then progress further all the way to the top, and now we're here in front of the Divine Gate. This gate is what Empyreans use to ascend to godhood, as we saw with both Miquella and Queen Marika. Speaking of Miquella, the whole reason why we're here in the first place is to stop him, because he wants to make a new age filled with love and compassion. I mean, to be honest, that's not so bad, but the way he wants to do it is through mind control, removing free will from people. He has good intentions, but just really shitty execution. And what's crazy is that he was really close to executing this plan until we arrived. We then went through the front, and here we see a familiar face, Radahn, now known as the Promised Consort. The reason why Radahn is here in the first place is because while we technically did kill him in the base game, his soul was still alive, and Miquella used Mohg's corpse as a host for his soul, allowing him to technically be resurrected. That's why you can't enter the DLC without him being defeated in the base game. While I don't know for sure if Radahn is being mind controlled by Miquella at the moment, I do know that in the past, Miquella did offer him an opportunity to become his consort in his new age. Whether Radahn agreed or not is still left up to interpretation. Some people think that he probably accepted the offer, but as time goes on had a change of mind, and honestly, I could see that happening. Anyways, we don't know for sure, but all that matters right now is the boss standing right in front of us. I remember on release, a lot of people were kind of disappointed that the final boss of the DLC was just Radahn, and I'm not gonna lie, while I wasn't that disappointed, I was still not all that impressed. I definitely thought that this version of Radahn could have still been in the DLC. However, I just felt like they could have made another character the final boss. And I'm not saying Godwyn. That's not the only reason why Promised Consort is considered infamous. No. This man is still the hardest boss in Soul's history in my opinion. Throughout this new playthrough, I was breezing through most of, if not all the bosses until this guy. I spent a good 2.5 hours on him. What's crazy is that this is the nerfed version of him. Pre-nerf was a whole other story, but despite the nerfs, he's still hard as hell. And I'm gonna say something, and I know for sure it's a skill issue, but I didn't really enjoy this fight that much. I don't know, it's weird. I thought I would have loved this fight, especially a year later, but it's still not that fun to me. And emphasis on to me, because I'm pretty sure a lot of people would consider this version of Radahn to be their absolute favorite boss. And I won't argue with them. There's still a lot of fun to be had here. It's just that the small things really makes it less enjoyable. First of all, I do think that his holy AoE spam has to be the most annoying shit ever. That's literally the only reason why the fight is hard. That and the visual clutter is still a big issue for me. It's not as bad as pre-nerf, but still blinding at times. Miquella's hair also obstructs my view a lot. And the other biggest issue with the fight itself is the lack of downtime. It's definitely more than what he had on release, but it's a small difference. It's just really annoying having to wait for him to do an insanely long combo, only for him to barely have any downtime. And most time when you think you have a chance and you're about to attack him, well, surprise bitch, he immediately interrupts your attack with his. Now again, I do want to let y'all know that he's not a bad boss by any means, but for me personally, he's again just not that fun. Skill issue, I know. Okay, but that aside, I can at least say that Radahn does provide something important that all final bosses should definitely have, and that's spectacle. Hate him or love him, he's definitely got aura. Also, for people saying that his presence felt a bit forced in the DLC, like he was just slapped in as an afterthought, I disagree. Everything makes perfect sense once it's explained. Now sure, there are some little holes here and there, but nothing too major that he felt like an afterthought. After defeating Radahn and Miquella, you get a final cutscene of Miquella in the past talking to Radahn about him being his consort for his new age. I'm kinda glad that the DLC at least ended with a cutscene, because if it's something that more Souls DLCs need to have is a final cutscene. The only one apart from this I can remember is the Old Hunter's final cutscene, but I do wish that there were optional endings you could get. I've always wanted an option of you siding with Miquella. Not saying that his ending is good from a morality point of view, but I just wanted that option to see what it would look like. Same thing as having a Saint Trina ending. While she's not a super crucial character in the DLC story, she's technically one of the first people to tell us that we need to stop Miquella, and it hits hard coming from her mostly because she's his other half, and she clearly cares and loves him, but even she knows that he's going too far. And she's just an interesting character in general. That's just my only complaint about the ending. I just wish we had more options. Now that aside, let's talk about the quality of the bosses. My overall opinion of all the bosses in the DLC are positive for the most part. They all provided spectacle, but looking back 1 year later, my biggest complaint about the bosses in Shadow of the Erdtree is still how overly aggressive many of them felt. Some of the major fights seem to be designed to overwhelm you with relentless combos, tiny openings, and constant pressure. It's not that some of the bosses are hard, it's just that they can feel a bit exhausting at times. Again, some. Some fights still manage to be fantastic, like Mesmer or Midra, but Promised Consort is definitely the prime example on why I think we need a faster combat system, or more skills to keep up with some bosses in upcoming Souls games. It starts to feel less like FromSoft's usual smart encounter design and more like they're just trying to break the player. Difficulty for the sake of difficulty. Again, only for a select few bosses. But still though, in terms of quality, most of them are still great. Another slight complaint I had for the bosses were the lack of cutscenes. I know it's not a big deal, but I do think that cutscenes help to make a boss stand out even more. Midra is a great fight on his own, but man, his cutscene helped visualize the horror of becoming the Lord of Frenzied Flame. Same thing with Mesmer. Seeing the grueling transformation of him letting the base serpent take control was done so well. Out of all the 11 Remembrance bosses in the DLC, only 4 had cutscenes, and that's kinda disappointing because the base game had 15 Remembrance bosses and 11 of them had cutscenes. 12 if you consider the one with Radahn before entering his arena. But seeing some characters that are connected to other highly important characters in the lore not getting a cutscene almost made them feel like mini bosses. And I say almost because luckily their fights are actually designed well enough for them to stand out. Again, super small nitpick, but I just had to get it off my chest. Now the question lies, does Shadow of the Erdtree still holds up 1 year later? Or did I only like it because of the hype it had on release? Shadow of the Erdtree 100% still holds up and is still my favorite Souls DLC. For basically $40, you're getting a second game within your game. The Land of Shadows is vast and atmospheric. The bosses, despite some criticism I may have, are still decent, as some of them are absolutely fantastic. You're also getting your money's worth as the expansion is pretty long. But again, it does have some faults. The Erdtree fragment system can be a bit annoying, as trying to find all of them can feel a bit tedious at times. While half of the bosses were fantastic, the other half could be a bit exhausting to fight due to their aggression and small downtimes. The world is said to be a bit empty, and while I don't care about that too much, I still think it's fair to bring up because it has been one of the main complaints the DLC got. But once again, Shadow of the Erdtree is still an amazing expansion, and after playing through a lot of new Souls-likes recently with very fast-paced combat, I was surprised on how fun it was going back to a slightly more slower paced style of game. So yeah, Shadow of the Erdtree definitely still holds up 1 year later.